On the 26th of April 1986, disaster struck. Uncontrolled core meltdown in the fourth reactor block of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant led to a massive explosion. Large quantities of radioactivity were released, setting in motion one of the worst ever environmental catastrophes. 20 years later, the devastating impact of the accident is still plain for all to see. A few kilometers away, a deathly silence pervades the town of Pripyat. Prior to the disaster, Pripyat was home to 50,000 people. Today, it is home only to ghosts. The entire area within a 30-kilometer radius of the reactor remains out of bounds. But the effects of this accident were not limited to Chernobyl. After the explosion, a radioactive cloud passed over Europe, transporting radioactive substances over thousands of kilometers. Many countries, including Switzerland, were affected by radioactive rainfall. Switzerland is prepared should an accident involving increased radioactivity occur. In a crisis, those in charge of managing the incident must receive reliable information on the contaminated area as quickly as possible. When it comes to monitoring radioactivity, Spiez Laboratory takes center stage. Its experts have access to a modern infrastructure that can be mobilized at any time. The Spiez Laboratory has a team of experts whose day-to-day work focuses exclusively on radioactivity. In an emergency, mobile intervention resources can be assembled on-site to measure radioactivity levels. Radioactivity is the spontaneous conversion of unstable atomic nuclei. These nuclei then discharge energy in the shape of radioactive radiation. The energy discharge can be radiated in particle form or as alpha or beta radiation. Gamma radiation is electromagnetic radiation. A simple sheet of paper provides effective shielding from alpha radiation. A thin metal sheet will provide effective shielding from beta radiation. However, thick lead-lined interior walls or external concrete walls that are several meters deep are needed to protect against gamma radiation. Radioactive radiation is harmful for all living things. Exposure to high doses over a short period of time can lead to acute illness in humans. Exposure to an extremely high dose will be instantly fatal. In the longer term, people who have been exposed to radioactive radiation have a greater risk of contracting cancer. In an emergency, members of the radioactivity team can be mobilized in less than 1 hour. They drive directly to the scene in the blue mobile laboratory. A thyroid counter is used to test people for traces of radioactive iodine. This is an important procedure as an accident in a nuclear power plant may cause iodine to be released into the atmosphere. A full-body counter enables the measurement of other radioactive substances that may be present in the body.
Gewicht? Ja, 72. 72, das sind wir gleich.
Before entering the human body, radioactive substances are to be found in the environment, in the air, in the soil, and in water courses, not to mention surface dust. The mobile laboratory allows the experts to take environmental samples from the scene and investigate them for the presence of radioactive substances. The contaminated area must be first clearly identified before the population can be alerted of the risk. All measurement data are transmitted directly to both the Spiez laboratory and the other emergency management partners. First and foremost, this concerns the National Emergency Operations Center. In a crisis situation, the NEOC becomes the hub for all operations. It receives data from the different monitoring teams, which it then uses to draw up situation reports and to decide on the measures to be taken. An emergency incident requires sustained longer-term monitoring. The intensive work involved would be too much for Spiez laboratory to handle alone. This is why it works closely with the Swiss Army and its NBC Defense Laboratory 1. Members of this militia troop in their civilian life also work in a laboratory. Both organizations regularly take part in joint exercises. The Spiez laboratory has the capabilities to carry out more detailed analyses of environmental samples. It has an extensive technical infrastructure, which allows it to collect measurements using a wide range of different methods and instruments. Most analyses of this type require the environmental sample to be converted into a solution. This process is carried out in several stages. For example, a soil sample is first finely ground and thoroughly stirred. Then a specific salt is admixed and the powder is melted at a high temperature. Complex chemical methods are needed to separate the radioactive substances from the solution. Finally, the resulting solution is studied using highly sensitive measuring equipment, such as a mass spectrometer. To ensure their preparedness in the event of emergency, Spiez laboratory personnel does not only take part in training exercises. Also, on behalf of the Swiss Federal Office of Public Health, the laboratory is responsible for the permanent surveillance of radioactive contamination in foodstuffs. For example, Spiez laboratory carries out routine checks on milk samples from selected locations. Radioactivity experts from Spiez laboratory also work with a number of international organizations, such as the UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Protection Agency, in Geneva.
The first part will be the search of penetrators in the field.
بهذه الكلمات أختتم وأطلب من بشرى أن تبدأ بتنظيم العمل.
And so I'm sure that we will be capable to find these sources within the next hour.
Iraqi environmental experts and laboratory technicians are trained under the guidance of specialists from Spiez laboratory. For example, they are trained to detect ammunition containing uranium in the soil.
And so we are very successful. It's over.
I can mark it with red color. Huh?
At the same time, they learn how to handle contaminated waste. This training contributes to greater environmental safety in these war-torn regions. Trained laboratory technicians can carry out state-of-the-art environmental studies and use their newly acquired scientific capabilities to help their crisis-hit country.
And it's clear my hand is now highly contaminated.
With such activities, Spiez laboratory helps contribute to the stability of crisis-hit regions. Finally, the laboratory participates in a number of joint research projects with universities both at home and abroad. For example, it is involved in a multi-year project to investigate radioactivity contamination in the Yenisei River, Siberia. The Spiez laboratory staff have removed sediment stones from different points along the riverbed. They have detected radioactive nuclides even in samples taken from 1,000 kilometers downstream. The Yenisei River is particularly interesting because of its proximity to the Krasnoyarsk nuclear processing plant, which was involved in the production of weapon-grade plutonium for many years. This research project, like all the work carried out by Spiez Laboratory, is motivated by one vision: a world without weapons of mass destruction. When disaster strikes, the radioactivity experts from Spiez Laboratory are directly deployed on the front line. In the laboratory, they can expand on and improve the initial analyses they made at the scene. In an emergency situation, they work closely with the Swiss Army. Commissioned by the UN, the experts provide support to develop structures aimed at improving the environment in crisis-hit regions. The radioactivity experts of Spiez Laboratory are involved in a wide range of activities. These are all part and parcel of their core task: to provide the population and environment with effective protection from the negative effects of radioactive radiation.